There's one thing that's going to make the single greatest impact when it comes to building a better body, a sharper mind, or improving anything about human optimization, and it's the smallest part of our body. All of our bodies are made up of tiny little internal batteries, and most people are walking around at 1% charge. Standard American advice will tell you to drink more caffeine or take this cheap supplement, but in this video, we're going to get down to the root cause and solve this problem once and for all. Today, we're doing a full deep dive on the chemical compound SS-31. This has very quickly become a fan favorite of optimization specialists around the world because of its incredible ability to restore our cellular energy, especially in the mitochondria. Cellular researchers are using it right now to reverse cellular damage, eliminate brain fog, and double our cellular stamina. Get comfortable because by the end of this video, you might be able to throw out half of your supplement cabinet and ditch caffeine for good. Let's get into it. Before we get started, it is important to note that I'm not a doctor and nothing I say in this video should be misconstrued with medical advice. And if you're going to follow through with any of the protocols we cover today, make sure you're only doing so under the direct supervision of a medical professional who specializes in this field. Now, let's get started. Before we can fix your energy, we have to know where it's coming from. The reason that almost everybody is struggling at the cellular level but has no idea is because we're not taught about it, and neither are our doctors. Yes, we're all taught that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and the medical professionals are taught about ATP production and how it relates to our cells, but nobody talks about how to improve it. If you don't know already, everything in our body is made up of cells. Your brain is made up of brain cells. Your bicep is made up of muscle cells, and all of our organs have their own cells. Now, inside every one of those billions of cells in our bodies are tons of little power plants called mitochondria. They're called the powerhouse of the cell because they literally charge and power our cells to give them the energy they need to provide the instructions that our body tells them to. For example, if I want a functioning liver, I need enough energy coming from my liver cells, which is going to tell it to become a functioning liver. That energy that our mitochondria create, that's what ATP is, and that's what we learn about at the basic level of human biology. ATP is that fuel that gives the cells the energy to carry out their instructions. So you can imagine the mitochondria as the fuel factory. Well, in a perfect world, all of our mitochondria are working perfectly and producing tons of fuel that our body can use and apply to do all of the functions that we're asking it to do. Now, if that were the case and we had unlimited cellular energy, you would have a really powerful person. You would have someone that could think at really high levels. You would have someone that could physically adapt and build muscle like no one ever has before. You would have someone who would have perfect functioning organs, perfect emotional state, and perfect everything. So why don't we just naturally have perfect mitochondria? What happens? What gets in the way? Well, they would be perfect if it weren't for oxidative stress and free radicals. It's kind of like in an actual power plant, how it creates tons of energy, which is great, but it puts out a ton of toxic waste that destroys our environment. Free radicals work almost exactly the same out of the mitochondria. The only difference here is in those power plants, that toxic waste is just a byproduct of production. But in the cellular world, those toxins, those free radicals, are only produced when there's oxidative stress that enters the mitochondria. That oxidative stress is the reason that we start to feel tired and groggy and develop brain fog, and we don't have as much energy as we used to when we were younger, and we don't recover as quickly, and every function about the human body begins to decay as we get older. It's all because of oxidative stress in our mitochondria. They're no longer able to function like they did when we were young. Otherwise, there's no reason those internal batteries of ours couldn't run at 100% forever. Here's the problem. As we all go through life, we do a ton of things that are going to increase the production of free radicals through oxidative stress because we all try things like alcohol, drugs, fast food, a lot of high-stress work environments, decisions that we need to make, relationships, all the things that rot our bodies from the inside out. Now, that sounds a lot worse than it is, but all of those things require tons and tons of cellular energy. And at a certain point, the supply can't keep up with the demand. And that's when we begin to produce these toxins. Because in a theoretical world, if we had unlimited cellular energy, truly unlimited, even if we did all of those other things, it wouldn't really matter because we would have the internal energy to filter out those drugs, those alcohol, that bad food. And we would have the internal energy to process all of those high-level decisions and still be a fully functioning human being. But unfortunately, we're all made with a certain amount in our tank, and a lot of us burn through it a lot faster than we realize. By this point, you're probably thinking the age-old question: how do I reverse the damage that I've done to my mitochondria, and how can I make sure that I don't impose any new damage on it so that I run at that top level all the time? Well, some of the basic advice that you hear on the internet is pretty good. Cut out the alcohol, stop doing drugs, don't eat bad food, don't eat things that are going to rot us from the inside. Those will drastically help when it comes to preventing new damage, but how do you clear up the damage that you've already caused? There's one cellular function we need to understand, and that's cardiolipin. Imagine cardiolipin as the super glue glue that covers all of those internal gears in our body that's producing these energy. It's going to be that glue that holds the machine together so that it doesn't fall apart and make room for those free radicals. That machine is what creates the internal flow of electricity. The second that it stops, slows down, starts to rust, anything happens, we're no longer producing in the optimal state. You can also think of it as the Great Wall of China that is protecting the mitochondria. Now, all of those things that I mentioned before, the drugs, alcohol, seed oils, whatever it's going to be, those are going to be like the Mongolians who are getting thrown at the wall trying to break through it every day. Now, the difference for most people is how many soldiers do you provide to that army? Some people are giving them a lot of resources, cannons, battering rams, big strong guys. Other people are sending in a couple foot soldiers with some swords who probably aren't going to get far. But remember, it's not just what you put in your body, it's how your daily habits go. How much stress do you have? How well are you sleeping? All of these factors play a role. Well, if your wall's been damaged, or worse yet, if it's got holes in it, now every time you're sending more reinforcements, they've got a clear shot and easy access point. Some of your cardiolipin has holes everywhere in it, and your mitochondria are suffering because of it. This is where SS-31 was born, and it is why it is becoming so popular, because it is the only effective mechanism that is on the marketplace today that can seal up those holes and restore the damage that we have done to our mitochondrial membrane. If we want to stick with the wall example, it's like sending a brick cementer down to the base level of the wall to add more bricks where those holes are and then cement it up so that the new guys that are coming through to try to break through now have more obstacles in the way. What does that do for us? Well, if those soldiers aren't running around in our city, our mitochondria, causing damage, using their swords to hack at those gears that are turning and destroying the machine from the inside. When that's no longer going on, our mitochondrial machine can operate at 100% efficiency instead of how most people's are, which is at the bottom echelon because nobody's ever done anything about their mitochondria before. Now, just like all things, everybody's body is completely different. Some people are genetically blessed and they aren't going to get affected by some of these things as drastically as others. Now, if you guys are like me, it seems like almost all the negative stuff seems to affect us at a way higher level. That's just the hands we've been dealt. You can either get bitter about it or you can find ways to improve it. For me, the best way that I found to improve it came directly from SS-31, and I will tell you from my own personal experience, the changes happen quickly. SS-31 is done on a 14 to 20 day cycle, very similar to Epitalon, which you guys know I'm a huge fan of. For any of you who feel as good as I do when I do things like Epitalon, SS-31 creates a pretty similar response for me, but it comes from a different pathway. Epitalon is more about physical rest and biological reset. SS-31 is more about biological restoration. What I like the most about SS-31 is, unlike Epitalon, you don't have to wait until you're done with the cycle to start feeling the effects. Oftentimes, people experience them even on the first day, because every brick that we're adding back to that wall is slowly making our machine start to work better again. Now, what does it mean when I say our machine is working better? Lucky for us, SS-31 is actually FDA approved, so there's been some really cool studies on it. Dr. Hazel Seto proved in a clinical research trial that as little as a single dose of SS-31, granted it's quite a high dose, restored age damage in ATP energy synthesis in skeletal muscle, returning it back to youthful baselines within hours, and at the same time cutting toxic free radical leakage by upwards of 60%. To anyone who watches a lot of my page, you understand just how big of an impact that statistic means. That is revolutionary. But that's not the only study worth citing. Published research in the Journal of Clinical Investigation demonstrated that SS-31 rapidly reverses organ tissue damage, even under extreme chemical toxicity. Let's take it from a car guy's perspective. Everybody knows that rust is car cancer. So imagine you've got an engine that's slowly starting to develop rust on the pistons, meaning that it's physically going to run slower and have friction when it's trying to produce. SS-31 would act like the one thing that could climb into the engine and wipe off all of that toxic rust off the engine to make it run like new again. To me, I see this being impactful for nearly everybody because everyone could benefit from stronger mitochondria, but there's a few groups that I see being the most helpful for. Certainly athletes. A lot of them don't realize because such a large portion of them are genetically gifted that some things don't affect them, but for the ones that aren't, they end up putting their bodies under such extreme stress that they end up breaking down their body from the inside out. That certainly doesn't stop at the mitochondrial level. In fact, it likely starts there. Treatments like this could extend the careers of some of the highest performing athletes on the planet. The same could be said for the executive or the business person or the person who has dedicated their life to their career. That is one of the most damaging things to the body, and a lot of you guys who are in the weeds on that know it. It's why a lot of people end up going bald. It's why a lot of people's health ends up becoming the #1 cost they pay for their wealth. A treatment like this could alleviate a lot of that damage that people are doing to themselves because they're not destroying those cells. So they're able to keep their body functioning at that optimal level, and they won't need to fill themselves with uppers to keep functioning at that level. But the group I see this being the most impactful for is the people like myself who used to be really into the party scene, who were all about drinking alcohol and doing a bunch of stuff that was probably not in our best interest. This is one of the only ways that I've seen that could actually reverse years old damage. There's a lot of ways to get rid of it in the short term, like doing glutathione or different detoxes after you've gone through a bender, or if you've had a bad month, whatever it's going to be. But the stuff that's years old, the stuff that's really rotted us from the inside, a lot of you guys are thinking about similar days back in college like I am. For most people, that ends up being lifelong damage they cause to themselves. A lot of times we see that damage in the form of cognitive decline. A lot of people like that end up experiencing things like brain fog, the inability to focus, poor memory, or just non-high functioning decision making. We all know people like this. In addition to the physical decline, like the beer belly, like the deteriorating muscle mass, all of that stuff to be said. I'll give you guys a quick insight on how it worked for me. The first time I did SS-31, I was very much still in the trying it so you don't have to phase, where I was just trying anything under the sun because I wanted to understand how it worked. Now, all of that came with aggressive research because I wasn't going to put anything in my body that I thought was going to be too hazardous. There are things, believe it or not, that I have said no to. Well, in my research, SS-31 was one of the biggest ones that stuck out to me because once I read about how it works for people with Barth syndrome, which is what it's FDA approved for, which is mitochondrial dysfunction, my immediate thought was, well, the average person could certainly use this who doesn't have mitochondrial dysfunction and drastically restore their mitochondria to an optimal state. There's no reason that it couldn't do that. And boy, did I feel that. The first thing I noticed was just a lighter, better mood. And I think a lot of that is a result of that oxidative stress in the body, because that's going to affect our brain cells. It's going to affect our emotional state. It's going to affect our hormones. Yes, mitochondria also affects hormones, because if our pituitary gland had enough cellular energy and enough power, it would overpower the endocrine disruptors that are destroying us from the inside. But it doesn't. It doesn't have an unlimited supply of energy. And it has likely been damaged from those endocrine disruptors. But imagine if we could go in and wipe that slate clean. If we could give it that strength back, it would operate the way that it's intended to, which is also why I think this peptide could have incredible applications for people who are looking for natural ways to increase testosterone in combination with either an enclomiphene therapy or an HCG or something of that nature, because we could restore the function of our pituitary just like we're going to be restoring the function of everything that has been disrupted. I definitely noticed things like better workouts and just an overall positive outlook on life. You just kind of feel like a weight has almost been lifted. And I think that weight is oftentimes those free radicals that are seeping through our system and causing that toxic release that is literally decaying us from the inside. Remember, that goes to the brain. But when that gets removed or restored for the first time, it's a bit of a surreal feeling. You almost wonder if it's like a placebo effect, and it very well could be. But I think that was refuted when I went back on it for the second and third time. The key with SS-31 is you don't want to be on it all the time. It's something that is usually best done 2 to 3 times per year. I'm going to be doing my protocol 3 times per year, and it's going to last 20 days a shot. I would say that it improved my physical appearance, but I can't directly attribute solely to that. Because I do use so many other things to improve my physique, I can't necessarily say that this thing directly contributed and is the reason I got in great shape. But what I can say for certain is that every time I am about on day 18, 19, or 20, I feel very good about my physique, and I really like the way that I look in the mirror in comparison to when I started the beginning of the cycle. Now, just like everything on this page, I'm not just going to tell you what you should take. I'm also going to tell you what pairs well with it, and there are just a couple supplements that I think do help this peptide work even better. The most heavily studied is going to be CoQ10 and PQQ. The CoQ10 acting as that electron delivery truck, which is going to help the SS-31 reach its intended target faster and more effectively. And then things like PQQ are going to help stimulate mitochondrial biogenesis. Mitochondrial biogenesis is the instruction for the body to produce and create more new, fresh mitochondria. Now, when I say things like that, a lot of you guys are probably instantly thinking MOTS-C. It's more like a tapered version of MOTS-C, and it's something that I would actually recommend doing in conjunction with SS-31, whereas the MOTS-C is something I would recommend doing after. Now, if you're thinking anything cellular, of course, you're going to be thinking about things like NAD+, which are also phenomenal additions to add to this, because it's just going to increase that level of ATP. It's going to offer more of that fuel that the SS-31 is trying to protect. Cellular aging is not a permanent condition. It's a biological metric that can be actively tracked and fixed. SS-31 has been the biggest difference maker for me. But again, everybody's body's different. So if you want someone to help do a diagnostic on your body to help you guys understand what is best for you, I made a company just for that reason, otmens.com, where we have a full team of specialists in this field. They're going to help you guys identify what your biological shortcomings are, and this can only be done through the correct diagnostics and having the right hand with the right experience guide you through the process. Again, if you don't want to use my company, it doesn't really matter to me, but I think everybody should be looking at their cellular health in some way, shape, or form, because you're not going to hear about it from traditional medicine. So if you're interested and you want a place to go, otmens.com is mine. otmens.com is the culmination of everything that I wanted for my own process, and I've made it accessible to all of you. And if you guys are looking for more ideas on ways to improve the human body, I post 2 videos just like this one every single week where I cover a new way of human optimization. So if you want to see more, hit that subscribe button and turn on post notifications so you don't miss any future episodes, and I'll see you guys in the next one.